Everyone, welcome to another episode of Dynasty Underdog. I'm your host, Uriah Dawkins, with me tonight, Billy Beeman and Jake Kornblum. What's going on, guys?
A ton of free agency news. Absolutely ridiculous couple days with the NFL free agency cycle. But I'm excited to talk about the Jays today with the prospect profiles. The
Yes.
Jalen, and Jayden should be a good one. These are some interesting guys we're going to talk about, and I'm excited to hear all of your thoughts. But yeah, how you doing, Jake?
Doing well. I'm a little exhausted by having to keep an eye on my phone in my hands and like seeing all the free agency news at the same time of like being completely locked in at work. It's a really hard thing to juggle, but I feel like I'm there. The Giants haven't signed Aaron Rodgers yet, so I'm still holding on by a thread.
Let's hope they don't, so we can see them go on the Sanders ride. That's what I want to see. I feel like they're going to be kind of. Oh, I know you don't. I just think it would be funny from outside looking in perspective.
just don't ruin neighbors. That's all. That's all I want.
Yeah, please. That's all.
I don't think that's possible. I think he's kind of proof. I think he's QB proof. You know.
Fuck. See if they land Kenny Pickett. We wouldn't be saying that. All right.
That's not even the worst of the bunch of this cycle, I feel like. But yeah.
Nah, it's a hellscape. All right.
Daniel
so news constants. So we have the legal tampering period, NFL free agency, where everybody gets signed roughly 2 hours after they're legally able to say they were working behind the scenes. So we have a bunch of them here. We'll go through them. Not going to take a lot of time, but hopefully for the listeners, there's maybe one or two that you didn't hear about and you're hearing now for the first time. So Devonta Adams is a Ram. Cooper Kupp like to lay on the outs. Matt Stafford brought back. We mentioned that a couple of weeks ago. This is good.
Yeah. I think it's kind of an upgrade from Cooper Kupp. I mean, I know we all love Cooper Kupp, but Adams, I think, just is aging a little more gracefully. His game, I think, translates a little bit better as you age out, not as physical, or it doesn't need to be as physical, that kind of thing. And I think it's a good pairing with Puka. I think that, some people may be concerned that this takes away targets from Puka. I think there's plenty of targets to go around. I think both these guys could easily command near 10 targets a game, and that would, be no problem for them to keep up, and for Stafford to be able to provide, right? Like that's just 20 attempts. He's going to probably throw 30 plus attempts. Mm-hmm. There's plenty to go around. So I'm not concerned about Puka. I think it probably helps Puka, if anything, right? Because, he's kind of had to do it himself over the recent, season. So yeah, I like this for the team. I like it for Adams. I like it for everybody. I think it's good. It's a good match.
I confirm for the sake of time.
Cool. DK Metcalf to Pittsburgh. Obviously, he wanted to go somewhere where they're going to be a contender and he could be warm and cozy on the beach. So he ended up in Pittsburgh. They don't have a quarterback yet, as far as I know. I think Aaron Rodgers is rumored together. So, but you got DK, you got Pickens. I mean, that's a pretty good duo.
Does it work?
I don't know. I don't know who the quarterback is. Arthur Smith. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to work.
We usually see the wide receiver and the cornerbacks fighting. We might now see the same wide receivers on the same team fighting each other in the same game. I could just see that happening. I could see both of them getting disgruntled at each other for doing something wrong. And yeah, it's probably going to start off right with the jersey number.
I was going to say, who's going to be the one to step down?
Somebody's got to wear 14. But yeah, I don't love it just because the situation is so up in the air with the quarterback situation. Mm-hmm. That's really the most concerning thing to me. DK is a really good wide receiver. There's no doubt about it. So I think if they can get the quarterback situation figured out, I think if Russell Wilson's there, it's probably not a bad thing for DK, to be honest with you. From a fantasy perspective, there'll probably still be a 10-11 win team to get booted out of the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, honestly, this really does open the door to George Pickens actually not starting the year in Pittsburgh. I know a lot of people probably think that that's not a reality because he's still on his rookie contract, but honestly, I think that he's probably done a little too much off the field, and I wouldn't be surprised if they try and get out of him completely.
Yeah, you're not the first person I've heard say that. So I mean, they could definitely try to move on from Pickens and reset the whole thing there. Yeah.
All right. Sam Darnold got signed by Seattle because Geno Smith. Well, knockout 2 right here, real quick. Sam Darnold went to Seattle. Geno Smith went to the Raiders. Geno Smith gets reunited with Pete Carroll, and Seattle gets this hope that Darnold is close to what he was for the most part last year, and not what he's been his entire career.
Yeah, I highly recommend folks to listen to the most recent Feel It or Fuck It with Matt Waldman. I think he breaks down this relationship really well. I think this is one of those situations where Darnold is probably going to have a much harder time than a lot of people want to believe, mainly because of a lot of the deficiencies on the offensive line for Seattle. We also saw that Darnold takes a pretty significant amount of time to release the ball in comparison to Geno with that weak offensive line. I think that actually puts him in a pretty precarious situation. So, yeah, I think Geno's in a much better situation going to Las Vegas, even though the team didn't particularly perform well over the last few years. I do think that within this draft, plus a good relationship with Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers could put him in a relatively positive fantasy landscape. So, yeah, I'm actually up on Geno and down on Darnold.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I also, it's like they're shipping off really good weapons too, like in Metcalf. And I could be wrong, but I thought they traded an offensive lineman, which sounds absolutely wild considering their offensive line has been terrible. But I think they did that too. And either way, to your point, he's going from a great offensive line that once they lost one of their best offensive linemen, it was extremely noticeable in Sam Darnold. And so, yeah, I completely agree. I think it's going to be a really tough situation for him in Seattle. And Geno, definitely on the up. I don't know if anybody's down on him for whatever reason, but I think that's a good move for all involved on that side of things. So, yeah.
All right. Justin Fields gets another shot to be a starter. And he goes to the Jets, which is just unfortunate for anybody trying to turn their career around as a quarterback. You have, Pro Bowl, Super Bowl winning, although Achilles injured and old Aaron Rodgers. He couldn't make that offense look good. So a lot of heavy lifting for Justin Fields here.
A lot of matches made in hell. Like, I don't think that was good. I don't think it was, it was necessarily the Jets, or it was both. It was Rodgers, it was Jets. And this is another situation where it's like a mediocre quarterback and a mediocre franchise get together to ruin people's dreams all over again. And so, yeah, I don't like really anything about it. I don't see this being successful. I don't like it for Garrett Wilson, even though this is the reunion. This isn't college. This isn't college. Like, they're not doing what they were doing in college. They're, you need to read the field. You need to, be decisive, and he's not either of those things. And so I'm not excited about this.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add, don't ask me why. I was listening back to old episodes of ours literally today. And for some reason, I went onto the 1019 episode where Billy, right after Fields gets benched, is just like, you should go out and buy Fields. He's going to probably become a starter next year. And sure as shit, he's most realistically, with this signing, going to be the starter for the Jets this upcoming season. And, if you were able to get him for a late second, maybe even an early third or a couple of thirds after getting benched, you're probably in a pretty good situation to sell on top of that for, close to a first. So maybe even a first plus.
Yeah.
Not a bad place to be. There are so many Justin Fields truthers out there that their red rockets are dropping. So, you just gotta be mindful that there's going to be a market for it. But either way, not super excited.
The Dynasty historian at it again.
I know. He
crate digger.
Damn.
Fucking crate digger, bro. Just in there. Maniac.
Not really specific player news, but Chicago offensive line got revamped. I believe they, between trades and free agency so far, have added 3 new offensive linemen to their roster, and as a priority, that was like what they first went out to go get. So obviously this is a move which it's hard to say about Chicago, but this is a smart thing to do when you have your first overall quarterback struggle last year. You could go ahead and say, hey, look, we're giving him protection now. Really, it's like some of the biggest help you could get a quarterback, right? Besides like wide receiver that can separate, but like you keep him protected. It's a good thing. So maybe tiny little wheels up on Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, these are pretty significant signings and trades, like Jonah Jackson from the Rams, Joe Tooney from the Chiefs, and then they sign, I think, a center as well. They also signed a couple D linemen, some really good ones. I mean, Grady Jarrett and I forgot what the other one was, but some really good signings, just all around, just really kind of just revamping this entire team. But I think, we've been me and Jake have been talking a lot about how Caleb Williams is kind of a buy, or at least is not a sell necessarily going into year 2. And I think this is just so good for his development. And so that's just really the key here for me. But Jake, anything further on that?
Yeah, I think there's obviously a next chapter where Caleb has to, start releasing the ball a bit quicker, less running around outside the pocket, doing things that maybe he didn't naturally do in college, and learn a little bit more to the NFL game. But I think these moves from the organization are only going to help. And if anything, I think this is actually driving the team to a direction of probably drafting a relatively high-end running back as well in this upcoming draft. Not necessarily a first rounder, but I would assume probably a day 2 guy. So I do expect the team to kind of continue to put in appropriate investments around Caleb. And all of that to say, there really isn't an excuse for him this upcoming season outside of learning a completely new offense, which is huge by all means. I'm not going to downplay that, but I added this here because I think this is kind of the direction that we wanted Chicago to go. They ended up hiring probably the best available head coach, or what everyone assumed would be the best available head coach. We don't know if Ben Johnson will actually be a good head coach, but we know that he is a fantastic offensive coordinator. So at bare minimum, we hope that the scheme properly fits the quarterback and hopefully the offense. But that's kind of the direction that I'm hoping for the asset that is Caleb Williams, that is DJ Moore, that is Roma Dunze. You can even say maybe is Cole Kmet. There is a place here where this offense should be going in the right direction with all of the signs that we've seen so far this offseason.
With how much, this is kind of just like a side question to this, with how much we kind of are giving a pass to Caleb a little bit for how terrible the talent around him is, and especially the offensive line, does it make you, I guess, more encouraged for a player like Drake May, who is in an equally terrible situation last year and kind of performed, I would say, at the very least on par, but better maybe, at least handled, I think, the pressure a little bit better, the way that he handled the pressure on the field and kind of, how he executed. So, I mean, does it give you more confidence in a guy like Drake May, or no?
Well, New England didn't do any of these things that Chicago's done so far. I mean, I'm confident that Drake May he had a promising rookie campaign, and you'd hope that it gets better in year 2.
I believe we did sign a right guard, but
and Mac Hollins.
Okay, thanks, Jake.
I do like Matt. It seems like a really good guy. But yeah,
he does like a guy. He doesn't wear shoes, I believe, anywhere but on the field. Yeah.
But no,
he calls them foot prisons, if I'm not mistaken.
That's crazy.
I'm excited about Drake May year 2, just because he showed did a pretty good job as a rookie with what he had there. So we'll see what they do with the drafting and see if they do any more signings and stuff. Hopefully they kind of follow in the footsteps of Chicago of really trying to give the guy some protection. That way he could cook the way he wants to.
I think to that point, honestly, I agree with Uriah completely. So far this offseason hasn't been, super revamp in New England, obviously bringing in
on the offense for sure.
Well, but also bringing in a new offensive coordinator, a new head coach. Those are going to be major changes in a positive way. And I do think that should hopefully help Drake May. I think it will also help a couple of the younger players that haven't had clear defined roles in the offense have clear defined roles in the offense, i.e. like a Pop Douglas. I'm not saying Pop Douglas is amazing, but we've seen Josh McDaniels with slot receivers and how they perform typically in his offense, usually pretty good. All I will add on to that is honestly, almost every single rookie quarterback from the 2024 class, I'm pretty excited about going into year 2. The only one that I have really no feelings towards is probably going to be JJ McCarthy, simply because I have nothing to compare it to. So I haven't seen him play football in over a year now. And that was in the national championship. So it's not a bad place to have been, but it's just so far removed now. With that being said, I do have wheels up on Drake May, have wheels up on Caleb Williams, and I have wheels up on Jayden Daniels. Top 3 quarterbacks are looking pretty sexy after year one. Maybe not to the point where everyone thought they would be, each of them. Obviously, Jayden Daniels more than the other two, but I think we saw more than enough positive signs to be excited.
Yeah, I guess just like my point was that I think they were in similarly bad situations, and Caleb gets a pretty large pass for it. And May, I think, played really well and was able to conduct himself in, I think, a more put together manner, like where it wasn't like so frantic all the time, right? And so I just feel like we don't really talk about him like that though, and he's definitely lesser valued than Caleb still, right? And so just kind of like thinking about that, the parallels there, and the fact that yes, he hasn't gotten the full revamp on the offensive line like Caleb has, but he's gotten a little bit, and they're probably going to do something in the draft here too. So yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of a little thought experiment there. Nothing crazy, but we can move on.
All right. Next news. Daniel. I did it again. Anyways, yeah, Daniel Jones to Indianapolis. He's going to compete with Anthony Richardson there. Not really a big deal, but this will say a lot about Anthony Richardson going forward if he's not able to start and stay starting the whole entire year and ends up giving any starts whatsoever, unless he's injured, to Daniel Jones. So kind of wait and see. Like, this is litmus test. Like, hey, if you can't beat out Daniel, then you probably don't have what it takes. So
this is a huge indictment on Anthony Richardson. That's really all I have to say. Like, just it kind of killed me to see the signing.
You think Daniel Jones is an indictment on?
I think it's a threat. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
Right.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, I do. Unfortunately, and that's like, I feel like bringing him in there is like, okay, this guy can run a similar scheme to whatever we're going to run with Anthony Richardson. He's an easy switch if A-Rich is doing some of the same things he was doing before. There's no guarantee he doesn't do those same things, and so yeah, I think it's super easy that we see Daniel Jones get some starts this year. I'm very concerned about it in general. I don't like it at all.
All right, Najee Harris. I think the deal just got finished actually today, but Najee Harris is a Charger, so he's going to get 400 carries at like 3.2 a pop. But I mean, this is good, right? Najee, for what it's worth, has been healthy and is able to take on a workload. He's just not electric. But really, if he's getting 20 carries a game, I don't think it'll really matter. I think this is a good thing. So
it's a good read on it. Yeah.
Yes. And this is the best landing spot he could get, probably, I think, in the offseason. We all wanted to know who they would go after. I think a lot of folks thought that they'd just bring back J.K. Dobbins and then probably draft a running back. And I think this was a great contract as well, right? It was, I think it's 5.5 basically guaranteed with $4 million incentives. It's not a bad deal at all for that. They basically take on zero risk to have a pretty decently starting caliber running back, and they probably still end up drafting a running back too, if I had to guess. So not bad.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I also think that it's not a foregone conclusion that J.K. Dobbins isn't brought back. Like, they're going to let him go test the market for sure, and obviously they want him to go get paid based on his performance. But with the running back crop that's coming in, does somebody really want to pay an often injured running back a lot of money to come? Right. So like, I don't know if he's going to have the market, and he may come running back like, hey, I'll just come back here and fight for a title with you guys, So like, I could see that happening still. Don't really care. I think Najee's going to get, like your eye said, 300 plus carries, no doubt about it. And he's going to be really useful for fantasy.
Did anyone hear that secret bar from Billy just now? He said he might test out the running back market, but he may come running back.
Bars.
I'm not a rapper.
Josh Palmer comes from the Chargers over to Buffalo. I think like on a 3-year deal. Obviously, Amari Cooper not likely coming back to Buffalo. Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the analytic dorks, and Josh Palmer actually was very good as a separator. So, which is kind of opposite of what Keon Coleman is.
Separating
So-
from success? Yeah.
It's the Chargers. They should. It's weird. They should be good. They just never have been. It's crazy. But yeah, Josh Palmer. He's a Buffalo.
It's so mid. Like this
Yeah.
is exactly what Buffalo has been doing for the past, I feel like, couple of years. They just get in some mid guy outside of their wide receiver one, and then they decided, you know what, we don't even need one of those either. We'll just play with a bunch of mid.
Yeah.
And so this isn't surprising, but it's disappointing in a way. I mean, it doesn't give you like you want something to elevate these elite quarterbacks, right? And it's like he has to elevate these guys, and it's like at least be on par with him and not make him do all the work. And so it just seems kind of like I don't know. Maybe they'll do something, but Keon Coleman, what is it? This guy, I don't know, Shakur. I mean, Shakur is the most exciting one out of all this.
Yeah. Still boring. Let's see. Have anything to add, Jake?
No.
All right. Hopkins stays in Baltimore, right?
No, moves.
Moves to Baltimore. Where the hell was? Oh, he was,
Kansas City.
Kansas City.
Kansas City.
Yeah.
Two contenders, very different though.
Yes. So yeah, Hopkins to Baltimore. I mean, that's cool. I think Hopkins, great career, without being too disrespectful, just because of the great career he had. He's pretty close to washed. So I don't know.
Yeah. Jake's like, can we move on? I do think it was funny. Ben was basically like, oh, he'll be a good wide receiver 3 behind Bateman, which is tragic and probably unfortunately the truth in some way. But I do think that he's pretty good competition for Bateman in terms of targets. So I don't think this is a good thing for Bateman. If anything, I do think it kind of does hurt in general. Probably all the target earners. Like that said, he did absolutely nothing in KC. So maybe we're just overvaluing, the impact of DeAndre Hopkins at this point. So maybe he's worthless. Honestly, this kind of signing and the Palmer signing, like those are signings, like just please, for the love of God, don't buy any of these guys for any reason. Like I just don't think it's worth spending any capital on.
And the next guy too.
And the next guy. So Javonte Williams got signed by Dallas.
Yeah.
First outside free agent Dallas has signed in like a decade. But he's not really good. The guy that we had last year, Rico Dowdle's better. By every single metric.
It's interesting. Yeah.
Every single metric. I mean, was like top 5.
A year ago, you wouldn't believe that. You'd call somebody crazy if they said that, but yeah. I think you're right. It's
just true. But he's there. Dallas will definitely add to that running back room because that's all we got. We got Deuce Vaughn and now Javonte.
I do.
If anything, try to sell Javonte.
Yeah, yes. That's what I was going to say. I think this is one of the juicier signings for a guy who is basically irrelevant. It's like, you know what I mean? Like he's a guy who nobody really wants, but he ends up in one of the better situations it looks like right now. And that's before, obviously, they go and draft somebody very highly, I'm sure. And so, it's like, get out of the situation as fast as possible.
Yeah, you could probably say the same about Josh Palmer too. Like if you can get a second for Josh Palmer, if you can get a second for Javonte,
if I could get multiple thirds for Josh Palmer, I'd be happy.
You could definitely get multiple thirds for Josh Palmer right now.
You can't get a second. I'll tell you right. You can't get a second. Do you think you could? Do you think
I don't? I don't own him, so I don't have a single. I don't have a.
Would you take 2/3 for Javonte?
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably would.
I think you can push for a second in this situation. I guarantee you, there's somebody out there that would pay for Javonte, a second for Javonte. Real quick here, Bryce Young went through something similar to what Caleb is now. O-line improvements, hiring a new coach, new offense. Are we assuming Caleb is mentally stronger to improve faster, or just that he is better? That's from Lapisaurus. Yes, I do think he's better. Just a short answer. I don't think anyone would tell you that Caleb is mentally stronger, though. I don't think that's one of the gifts that he came into the league with. But I do see some like parallels with the situation, how like bad those situations were. And I think there was still hope for Bryce Young too. Like there was. He just played so much worse than Caleb Williams did. Like I think that's just the bottom line. And I think Caleb is a better prospect. So I think both those things kind of come into play with that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
We have a request here by AJ in the chat. Yes, we missed. I didn't have this list up, but Nick Westbrook Ikene.
I didn't even know that's what that meant. NWI.
NWI.
Dude, he's not known well enough for me to know him as NWI.
Anyways, all he does is catch touchdowns and doesn't do much else. But he went to Miami.
Great.
So we'll see how that goes, right? I mean, they have Waddle, they have Hill, and
I think
Johnny
it's a good. I honestly
Malik.
think it's a good football move. I think it's a good real football move.
Anytime.
Like he's a great like third wide receiver to have. You know what I mean? Like, and he is a red zone hawk. Like the dude can catch touchdowns. He's an NFL receiver, but like this does nothing for me for fantasy. I don't think I would ever roster him, let alone line him up. I mean, in deeper dynasty, like 35 plus roster spots, like I'll definitely roster him. But he rarely would make a lineup. And if he was making my lineup, I would feel kind of unfortunate about my lineup. Yeah, best ball, absolutely. He's probably much more highly valued in best ball.
We're really just trying to look at the positives. Got it. Let's go.
Next one, Kenny Pickett.
He's mid.
He went to Cleveland, and Cleveland sent over.
Tiny hands.
Yeah, and then Cleveland sent over DTR over to the Eagles. So Eagles get a new backup quarterback, and Pickett today, right now, at this moment, is starting for Cleveland.
I think the DTR move is kind of a better fit than Pickett there. And, I mean, I guess Cleveland is like, we saw something in what, those few starts or that one start from Kenny Pickett to give him a shot. I kind of feel like they are going to give him a run at like competing here, despite bringing in another quarterback. If they bring in Cam Ward, then it's over, obviously. But he's a good backup. I think he's a fine backup. So, yeah, meaningless for Dynasty. But that said, always roster those backups. You never know what happens.
Drew Lock's definitely coming into this quarterback room. It's going to be Pickett, Drew Lock. If only we didn't re-sign Tommy DeVito.
What's less than mid? All right. This was actually a really good one. Very happy for him because dude was absolutely balling out. But Chris Godwin returns to the Buccaneers. That's a franchise that's doing stuff right. They got Baker Mayfield locked in for a little bit. That brought Mike Evans back. Chris Godwin. They're just going to try to run it back. It was looking pretty good until Godwin went down last year. Obviously, this hurts Jalen McMillan for those truthers, but this is great for Godwin. Yeah,
I have seen people say buy Jalen McMillan, which is a fine take, I guess. But it's like, is anybody really selling him at a cost that you're gonna buy? Like most people are probably just gonna ride it out at this point, I would imagine.
He's like a package player now.
Yeah, like I don't think his value is going to dip too low. So I think like that's the most actionable part of this. That said, this is why you were buying Chris Godwin. Like anywhere he went, I mean, the only other place that he was basically rumored to at all was New England, actually. And they were trying to pay him like $20 million more. And he was like, no, I'll just stay here. And so like, I mean, that's a big indictment on New England. But also I just think, he knows that he has his role here. He's very comfortable with it, has a connection with Baker. So I'm very excited about Chris Godwin coming back. Very excited about that. I think it's good for the entire team.
Zach Ertz does stay in Washington. That's really kind of hurt. Didn't want that to happen. So, and I think they signed that other tight end they have there too.
John Bates.
Thank you. I knew you would. Yeah. So this is
got a big contract.
Bad news for Ben Sinnott, but we still hope, right? It's only year 2. He's not going anywhere. So all it takes is Zach Ertz old ass to get hurt, and then we can see what Ben Sinnott could do. But just unfortunate that you would kind of hope that after 1 year they would be like, okay, let's ride with this guy. But is what it is.
My Ben Sinnott shares are sitting next to my Michael Mayer shares.
Yes, that's
all in purgatory.
That's very fair.
Yeah, waiting for a 4th year breakout.
Yeah, could have happened to Trey McBride if Cardinals brought Ertz back again the 2nd year. Like we may never have known. So I'm kind of sad panda about this one, but that's okay.
Yeah, but can you go out and buy Sinnott for a 4th? Like I'll do that.
Oh, probably.
I'll take a shot. Like I still think that there's opportunity here. Like if again Bates, if Zach Ertz goes down, I truly believe Bates. Even if let's put it this way. Bates is blocking most of the time, regardless. Like they may both be on the field, Zach Ertz and Bates. I think that still happens if Ertz was to go down. You just slot in Sinnott, and I think they still want to develop this kid. And I believe I even heard the coaching staff talk about that a bit. Yeah. So he's not completely dead in the water. His dynasty value is, So I'm probably just holding him or buying him for nothing or throwing him in on a deal if I can. Yeah.
All right. Last one we have here, Darius Slayton. Good wide receiver. He stays with the Giants.
Saw a crazy stat today that if he averages 700 yards over the next 3 seasons of this contract, he ends up being the number 2 wide receiver in Giants history. How fucking sad is that shit? Number 1 is Amani Toomer. And
I was about to say Amani Toomer.
The problem is that Giants wide receivers either leave or they get injured and then suck. So like Hakeem Nicks got injured, fucking Odell Beckham got injured and then fucking hated the team. And so it just means that Malik Neighbors, all of this to say is that Malik Neighbors is going to end up, leaving after 5 years. And then we're still going to have Darius Slayton as our number 2 wide receiver in our.
So it's Amani Toomer, Odell, then.
I don't know who number 2 is actually, to be honest.
But all Plaxico's got to be in there.
Plax only had like two or 3 seasons in New York. Yeah, because he played most of his career in Pittsburgh, and then he.
And y'all want to put Eli Manning in the Hall of Fame, please.
That's, I think, even more of an indictment of how great he was. Talk about how terrible all the receivers were. Come on, man.
But it's cool. Even as a Cowboys fan, and I hate on the Giants. Slayton was one of those guys that was like, you know what, we could bring him in there, and then I wouldn't have to worry about our team drafting wide receiver too high. Like, I think he's good enough to be wide receiver 2 on our team right now.
Yeah,
but
he's fine.
He's so mediocre.
And for fantasy, I don't care. Like, but as for a football team, I think he's pretty good.
Yeah, I think as a true football player, he's actually really, really solid, and he fills out our wide receiver room well. I think he fits a specific role, and he's significantly better than Jalen Hyatt, who literally does the same shit as him. So as long as Jalen Hyatt is on the field, I think I'm a pretty happy guy.
He's somewhere on that scale, that Nick Ikena Westbrook scale, like maybe a tick or 2 above, but he's somewhere in that.
He's above, but I think his role is less exciting. Like NWI, which I have to say literally reads like a fucking interstate name. I don't know why, but NWI ends up being probably more of a body that is in the limelight more just because of his touchdowns. I don't think Darius Slayton really has that.
Did he say Lap said Victor Cruz? Didn't he have like a half a season of good production? And then
no, he had like
basically died.
He had like 5 years, and then I think he tore his ACL. Yeah,
like 2 years good production, and then AJ Rams just resigned DeMarcus
he said
Robinson.
Resigned.
Yeah, they may have done that too. They may have done that. Who knows? But DeMarcus Robinson, I do think that kind of rounds out that wide receiver core for them. That's not surprising with Jordan Whittington and the other 2, like
Tyler Johnson.
They don't need anything else, so that makes sense. Yeah, Tyler Johnson, Jesus.
All right.
All right, cool. Yeah, that's it.
All your free agency news from us that we know about, that matters, that we think matters, and hopefully we got it all. All right, we have a couple topics here.
Did he say the Rams just re-signed DeMarcus Robinson? Why am I seeing the 49ers and wide receiver DeMarcus Robinson are agreeing on a 2-year deal? What is this guy doing?
He can't read. It's okay.
Sabotage.
Oh my God, dude, that wide receiver core has really gone downhill. Yeah, I don't love that for the Niners.
Niners are cooked.
I love that for Ricky Pearsall. All right, let's keep going.
Jacob Cowing. All right, so
Jacob Cowing, yes, great shout.
Thank you.
So the Rams did technically resign him. They definitely didn't resign him.
Stupid.
Jesus Christ. Okay.
All right. I read the internet wrong. Yeah, that happens. Okay, so
no, it wasn't you. It was AJ.
No, that's what AJ is saying in the live chat. He read the internet wrong.
Oh, he read the internet wrong.
Yeah.
No, you put this.
Cut that, Billy.
Leave this in. Call him out.
This is left in the podcast for sure. I'm gonna double it up for you.
Right. I put this in here, so I'll just shout it out, and we can talk through it really quick. Trade block immediacy. So this is probably one of my biggest pet peeves. So I really wanted to bring this up to both of you because both of you do it, and I don't mean it in like a pet peeve, like oh fuck you guys for doing this. It's more like I don't think that it's ever successful. I don't think I've ever seen anyone take a newsworthy player, put them on the trade block, and then they get sold immediately. So I wanted to ask you the actual strategy as itself. 1, why the fuck are you doing it if it isn't effective? And 2, would it not be just more efficient to send out offers if you actually want to sell the dude? Like, you're putting up guys that are a bunch of bozos that have like news associated with them, like Sam Darnold. Like, if you want to sell Sam for a first, wouldn't it just be more beneficial to send out a couple of offers for like Sam for the 111 or the 112? Like, wouldn't that be a better bet? Like, that's kind of my open question to both of you.
Well, since we both did it, this is where it's coming from, and I'll just be brief. But like, mine was different. Typically, you see folks put players on a trade block after quote unquote good news or a good landing spot. So I did the opposite, where Devontae Adams gets sent to the Rams, and I'm like, let's see if folks think I'm, scared of Puka going forward, right? Let's see if they're saying I'm panicking. So turns out folks thought I was panicking.
The fuck did you think we were gonna think?
Wait,
10 minutes. I had like 5 offers. And like
5?
They're actually this is interesting. So they 5. They were actually pretty good. Billy's was the worst by far. Even after
no surprise.
It's like this guy thinks I'm an idiot. I've been talking Dynasty with him weekly for like 7 years.
That's incredible. Why is that no surprise whatsoever?
Doesn't even know who I am. Okay.
But so you're saying, like, actually in that circumstance, you weren't typically getting low balls though. So you were actually getting either market value or right around market value.
It was actually interesting. Not what I thought would happen. And to be perfectly honest, I didn't do it on purpose. I was just trying to get a screenshot of the add a player to the thing, and then I must have clicked yes and added him to the block. It wasn't until I knew that I added him to the block and Billy's like, "Hey, did you see my offer?" in a text message. And I'm like, "What?" And so I go look, I'm like, "Oh yeah, I have no less than 5 of them."
That's so good.
So really, it wasn't even on purpose. But yeah, like I did have offers. Like I had like a Rashee Rice and like a mid first. I had like Higgins and a random first. Those are all like really good starting points if you're trying.
I said a random first. I said a 26 first.
That's Deuce Vaughn.
These were 25. These were 25
Marquise Brown and some other stuff.
Rico Dowdle.
Yeah. Billy's was
there was
insulting.
some stuff in there. I really didn't think it was that insulting.
The rest were not too bad though. But I didn't do it on purpose.
That's actually really cool. Thank you for correcting me, because that is a good point. I actually didn't notice that you had put up Puka Nacua. For some reason, I was reading it as Devontae Adams. So fair enough. Good on you. Really cool though. I love the dichotomy of that, because I would have expected, to your point, like if you put a player that technically would have a concern from a move, you would think that people would try and be a Billy, but instead, they didn't, and just Billy was Billy. So anyway, Billy, why don't you tell us about your experience putting up Sam Darnold on the block 3 seconds after he got signed by the Seahawks?
I love this experiment where you get the expected reaction. What was going to be the outcome of this? Anyway, for me, I did not get anything done. I did see somebody put Debo on the block after the Debo news, and they got a deal done pretty soon after that. So it's very few and far between. I agree with Jake. I don't really ever have much success with it. It is probably the right thing to do to just go send out a bunch of offers.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next thing I want to talk about, just because we were doing rookie drafts and we're getting some rookie ADP, which is all going to change after the NFL draft, which we could talk about this another time. I don't know if we should necessarily. That's how you end up with like Clyde Edwards-Helaire over Jonathan. So funky stuff's going to happen between now and then. But I was just thinking, hey, say you're sitting at 101, 102, 103, but you're not really needing a quarterback or like Gene T or something, like you want to move down and or maybe you only have a few picks and you want to grab a couple more, so moving down a couple slots. Like, do you think now's a good time to look at ADP and look for guys that you're trying to target? Say you're wanting, Ibuka or whatever. Like, are you trying to trade down to that spot right now, or are you going to try to really kind of work it on draft day if you need to?
I mean, like I feel like at this time I'm more trying to accumulate. Like when I'm trying to accumulate picks, it's simply to accumulate picks. Like, it's not because this pick is going to be in the range for this player, because I do think there's too much uncertainty right now, where the draft is going to change so much. Things are going to be shifted around so much. So right now, if you're looking at like keep trade cut, you have Travis Hunter at 12 and you have Caleb Johnson at 13. Like those two things are probably going to change a lot come draft day. You know what I mean? Like, and so I just don't think you can say right now, like if you were doing what you're talking about right now and you were looking at some of this stuff, you'd say to yourself, I'm going to grab a late round pick to get Travis Hunter. But like he very well might be up at 106, 105. So you may have bought that pick and now your guy's not there anymore. So I'd be really cautious doing that kind of thing. For me, I would just be accumulating picks at good value and as many of them as possible. That's about it.
I like it.
Yeah, I agree with that. It didn't work out exactly how I wanted to, but for instance, in DU5, I had we talked about this when we talked through the startup, but I definitely overdrafted Tyreek Hill, and I also had drafted Deebo Samuel actually in a pretty good spot. I think it was like in the 13th or something along those lines. I was able to package the two of them with the 207 to get 2 firsts back. And, that move I don't think can happen in a vacuum, but I specifically don't think it could happen with the 25 firsts that I ideally wanted. So instead, like I just made the move work to the way that I did. And the reason I bring that up is because that was kind of my hope, was to take those two basically immediate point scorers and hopefully get into certain ranges that I wanted. Unfortunately, within that same league, like right after the startup, 2 firsts basically were traded immediately within the 25 first round, within the 25 first round. Yeah, I don't know why my brain stopped working like that. But the big thing there is like now we have a singular owner who has just like a shitload of firsts because he's in a productive struggle and he's owning the first round. It's really, really great work by him, but it's also making it significantly difficult for me to have done what I wanted to do. So I think like it really just depends on the individual league economy, right? Like I was looking at DU3 and we have Textbook, shout out to him, and we have NWO Joe, who are both, I think they have literally like 10 of the 12 picks between the two of them. Like what the fuck am I supposed to do with that? And it's great work by them, but like I'm not going to buy in. Like the reality is just like I know that they own the market. I know that they're going to dictate the cost. And at this point, it just doesn't make any sense for me to even loiter around and find out, because I know what happens when you fuck around, you find out. So I think like in these circumstances, it's really, really league dependent. But I do think that there are small gaps, to Billy's point before, where there are values and you can potentially get in there and you can really like start to set a little window of value for yourself. And I would even say that that would be a really cool way to move into the first round, is like pick out certain pockets of tiers that you really like. Obviously the higher end is going to be very expensive, so probably don't recommend doing that. But even into the second round, doesn't have to be just first, and almost accumulating a certain tier, or maybe even the tier break in between both, and then see what you can get on both sides. And if you know your other owners in your leagues and you know that they don't particularly do a lot of great in-depth research, it's a good opportunity to even sell out of your first couple of picks if you know that they might go the wrong direction and charge them a premium to get the picks ahead of you, things like that. So I don't know. There's a lot of awesome ways to work around it. It's just more so about targeting the avenues that you want to, but I don't go after certain players this early, to Billy's point. I think it just changes way too much until, early May.
Yeah, absolutely. Even at the top, you like to think it's certain at the top, but Cam Ward could easily go 1. He could, you know what I mean? 101 overall because he literally goes 1, or he could fall. Like that's exactly what I was about to say. And then he could not be in the top 4 or 5 picks or whatever he's being picked right now. So a lot can change there. Before we move on real quick, Gordo hopped in. Hello there. What up, Gordo? Welcome to the channel.
Awesome. Just in time for prospect profiles. We have, well, I'll probably need you guys to help with the schools. I did not look, but we have Jalen Royals out of
Utah State,
and Jalen Noel out of
Iowa State, as well as Giddens.
Excellent. So we'll start with Jalen Royals.
Ooh, starting with a hot one. Billy, you want to go first? You want me to go first?
I can jump in. Sure, I can jump in. Okay. Jalen Royals. I like Jalen Royals quite a bit. I kind of labeled him as a dynamic Z type receiver, often schemed up to get the ball in his hands, but not for lack of route technique. Phenomenal pacing and footwork to separate from defenders. uses burst and speed to pull away late. Excellent and diverse release technique. Displays ability to beat press coverage with the previous mentioned skills. Okay stem nuance, does exhibit some hip shifts, mid route, and good multi-directional movement, but doesn't exhibit much micro movement. I'd like to see more of that. Excellent ball skills, though. Outstanding athleticism leading to great yak ability. Very elusive, but not quite elite, I wouldn't say, in that regard. Good, not great awareness before the catch, after above average post catch. And I think he lacks some blocking reps in general. Like, you just don't really see him do that much of it. So I don't think that's like a big part of his game. I thought he exhibited extremely great body control. I think that's one of underrated aspects of receiving in general, but his ability to really quickly contort, spin mid-air to then track a ball, and then also to spin out of it and transition from catch to run. It's just so smooth and dynamic, and it's really a plus part of his game. And I think it kind of makes up for where he doesn't have the elusiveness. He can kind of get away with those skills after the catch. So a really impressive part of his game that I think leads to a lot of impressive catches, and then also plays after the catch. So I like him a lot. I don't think he's like the best out there. He got quite a few above average marks for me in the route technique portion. Separation I thought was exceptional. Footwork, pacing, release concepts. Again, I talked about the body control. I think ball tracking is really good. I do think he's not the biggest guy, so like there's that part of it. But yeah, he got above marks in almost everything. I think holding him back is kind of the blocking and maybe some of the awareness stuff. But for the most part, I liked him. What do you think, Jake?
Honestly, I don't know what it is. Maybe I had zero expectations going in. He's probably one of my favorite like lower end receivers.
Yeah.
But I think that unfortunately a lot of people are into him, and he's already kind of getting pushed up into the second round, which is just not a place that I probably am going to buy unless he is an actual day 2 drafted wide receiver, which I don't know if that's going to be the case. He probably is more of a day 3 guy. But regardless, he is absolutely explosive after the catch. I don't know what it is. He almost looks like he's gliding when he runs. He's incredibly sharp with his feet. Great double move wide receiver. I don't think, like Billy said, he doesn't have the actual micro movements that a lot of like high end elite receivers do, but he has these like beautiful shoulder drops. He has really silky feet to just get him out of situations. His 10-yard split at the combine was exceptional. He tied first with Matthew Golden at 1.39 seconds in first 10 yards. He's super slippery out of tackles. He almost looks like he's like covered in Vaseline. It's pretty hot, pretty sexy. He handles his body weight really well. Like, he literally just looks like when he shifts onto his feet, it just pushes off in this like almost angelic way. Electric footwork. Honestly, some of my favorite in the entire group. And I love the
angelic. I love it.
And I do love how he is probably the first true separation creator. Like, I think he's probably the best one that I've seen so far in my like tape review, in the sense of like, he is just a receiver who just creates separation by himself. Like, he doesn't really need anything else. I don't know if that's just down to the level of quality that he's playing against. I watched him against Boise State and Utah. And then last, and probably my most negative thing about him, is he has T-Rex arms. Like, the dude just doesn't have strong extension. Like, it almost looks like he has short arms, to Billy's point. He's not a big dude, so he just might not be very gifted there. But it prevents him from being able to attack the ball well. And I think that has a lot to do with the point about his awareness. So what ends up happening is, more often than not, because he doesn't have that extension, he doesn't actually like go towards the ball, it feels like, early enough, and defenders are usually on his ass more often than not. So I think he has some pretty glaring flaws that he'll
Sorry, Joe came in. I just came in here to hear silky feet and was like, what the hell are we talking about?
Oh, you know exactly what we're talking about. I think that there's some pretty glaring flaws here, but I do think that in the right system, he's probably going to be someone similar to like a Jermaine Burton for me from like last year, where if I can get him somewhere in the 3rd round
without the off the field stuff.
Yeah. I mean, like, I liked the tape so much that the off the field stuff doesn't bother me as much. He doesn't really have any, thank God. I looked up Jalen Noels, but I'm just saying, like, I am more than willing to I'm reading that comment. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm more than willing to kind of give up the draft capital in this circumstance is all I'm saying. But yeah, I was really enjoying watching Jalen Royals. I probably should watch a couple more games just in case it isn't as appealing as those first 2 games. You're right. What have you seen? Oh, sorry.
Really quick though. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'll throw it to you, Ryan, 1 second. I agree with you on most of that. So I have right here lacks a large catch radius leading to less contested catch success in specific situations. And so that's one place I dinged him and what I was talking about with the size specifically. But the only other thing that you mentioned that I wanted to touch on one more time was talking about how he kind of glides, right? And I try to find better ways to like describe that, not for any other reason than because like I feel like they're doing something specific. And for me, like one way to describe it really well is multi-directional movement, right? Where he's like moving in both vertical and horizontal at the same time, which is very difficult to even like imagine somebody doing, but that's what it is that he's doing. And it's like, it looks like somebody's gliding. It's very, very impressive. But when guys can do that, I think that it's a very unique trait that we should pay attention to, is kind of why I wanted to highlight it. But Uri, what do you think about this guy? I know that the numbers are pretty nice for him as well.
Yeah, I was just looking up his contested catch rate. Not great, 37.5.
Yeah.
That's the lowest out of anybody we've talked about this year. So, just saying. Also,
that's fair.
Not just it. Matthew Golden's man drop rate is 22.2. That's nothing to do with what we're talking about, but that's bad. All right, so Jalen Royals, 7.9 yards after the catch per reception, and 8 out of 9.4. Slot rate of 22.1. Yards per team pass attempt 1.8. It's good. Career yard per out run is 3, which is good. Analytically, it looks good. First down per out run is 12%. Man yard per out run is 3.59. Zone is 2.92. And his dominator is almost 38%. Early declare, breakout age of 20. Yeah, I'm in on him. So we'll see what it costs. But yeah, there's really nothing here that's saying, hey, there's he fits all the boxes.
Yeah, the numbers definitely do look nice. I mean, the only thing, the breakout age is a little late for sure. But outside of that, you would like. I like to see guys playing the slot quite a bit, especially at his size. But the fact that he was this successful while not having a high slot rate is pretty impressive too. Yep. So you could look at it both ways. Before we move on to the next guy, a bunch of comments here. Let's see what we got. We already did that one. Silky feet, T-Rex arms on his ass. What? Yeah, we are we're on one today for sure. You missed. He looks like he's covered in Vaseline.
Oh, that happened.
What kind of podcast is this again? I'm not sure. Oh my goodness. He said, oh, like playing Halo, jumping and strafing at the same time. Yes, exactly. That's exactly right. I think that's how a lot of people can familiarize that. That's hilarious. Good shit. Good shit, Joe. And AJ. Good stuff, guys.
All right. Back on the tracks.
YouTube. Get on the YouTube, listeners. There's so much fun in here. Holy shit. All right. Yeah, back on track. Let's go.
Next one is the other Jaylin. Again, we have Jalen, and Jayden this week. It just made too much sense not to do that. And so we have Jalen Noel. Was it Iowa State again?
Yes.
Yep. And just because I have it, and it was there when I was putting this together, we talked about Raz last week, relative athletic score, and his relative athletic score after combine testing was 9.72 out of a possible 10. He destroyed the combine. So,
yeah, this is an interesting receiver. Like, I think that there's some really quality aspects of his game, but then there's just some glaring holes. So I'll just go over kind of the overall review, but I think he's a field stretching receiver who displays excellent route prowess. He excels with technique at the stem of the route, innate ability to deceive defenders with micro movements, peaks, leans, footwork, mid route, especially on downfield routes where he can sell one direction and burst through another. Exhibits ability to beat press fairly regularly with quick footwork and good release package matched with speed and quickness through the route. Can be knocked off balance with contact from strong defenders, but often handles press pretty well. Good, not great hands, body catcher a lot of the time in situations where he probably should just be catching with his hands, attacking the ball more. However, he exhibits excellent ball tracking over the shoulder downfield. So, you do see him kind of able to secure a ball kind of coming from any angle, any target, but it's just more how he's kind of securing the ball and attacking it. He lacks yak ability and elusiveness despite the above average speed and burst. So obviously he jumped out the gym, but you just don't see it really translate, in my opinion, to evading defenders and really, game breaking speed and taking, you do see him take some to the house, but not really due to him creating so many yards after the catch. It's a lot more wins before the catch, not after. I do think he struggles in contested catch situations. The catch radius isn't really there. You do see some drops on film. I don't think he'll play a large role in a blocking scheme. So, that could just limit opportunities. But one thing to note, watching his QB was extremely unpleasant. So I don't think that these guys had, much to work with from that regard. So I thought the route technique was really good. Some okay parts of the ball skills, but then some, that were a little bit underwhelming. Pretty good athleticism, but then in the spots that really matter, where it's like a dynamic ability to create after the catch and make defenders miss, I just don't think it's really there.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. I maybe a little bit more positive on him. I did think that his general elite qualities were strong hands and his calculated micro movements. I thought the micro movements actually really helped him specifically. Usually like pre-stem of the route. So he usually was separating almost like about 75% within the route, which was really excessive. But also, to Billy's point, those were basically all of his home run touchdowns that he would have. Basically didn't have the ability to create yards after the catch, except when he was literally in just like a field of green. That is what I really liked about him. I honestly thought that he struggled against high press. So when he was getting pressed like literally on the line, usually when he had like a 2 or 3 yard gap, he was fine. But when he was getting hard pressed, high pressed, I felt like he was struggling pretty significantly. His general speed, as we saw, he tested really well, to Uriah's point, at the combine, is there. I think he actually had the most amount of reps as well. So maybe he has a little bit more strength than I'm giving him credit for, but I think he actually did like 23 reps, something like that. It was pretty
actually kind of impressive.
Yeah, it was pretty solid. It really stuck out to me. But I did find that his route tree was limited. But the only thing I will say about his limited route tree was that I did like that he ran specifically significantly more ins and outs than normal slots that I typically see, especially for those limited guys, which I think will actually show off well for him in the NFL if he does get decent enough draft capital. I think that he actually has pretty decent upside if he does get drafted, probably in like early day 3. You could really see him being a pretty like high end wide receiver 3. I feel like he's almost like the perfect guy for like future state Tommy Blair, like throwing him in as like the circulated, wide receiver 3 that just like cycles in his team. That's kind of where I see someone like him who just like gets somewhere around like that 11 to 12 points per game range just to kind of fill out the roster. But all in all, he was significantly better than I thought he was going to be. He's getting so hyped online. Like he's like one of those dudes that is like so hyped online that I was getting concerned pre-tape, but I definitely see some of the excitement around him. I just think that to Billy's point, specifically around his aggressiveness towards the ball, general catch radius, still also an issue, just like with Jalen Royals, that he just has probably too many flaws for me to be super, super high in on him. And we're talking about, once again, like Jalen Royals, people are touting him to be somewhere in like the mid-second round of your rookie drafts. And that's just not where I'd be comfortable taking a player like him. So, I'll probably have to pass for the meantime. What have you seen, Uriah?
Real quick, sorry. I
need to stop telling Uriah
I'm sorry.
that he's up next.
I just talk too much. That's all it is. But I do like Royals much better than Noel.
Same.
Like I have him like 8 points ahead.
No.
On the grading scale, Noel, whatever his name is. Noel. Jesus Christ. Uriah can't stand it.
It's on his Twitter bio.
Dude,
it says
say it right.
Pronounce Noel.
Say it
Phoenix.
fucking right.
Phoenix.
Wow. Yeah, no, I'm glad I have y'all here to correct me. Holy shit.
If there's one person to never listen to about pronunciation of names, it's definitely Willie Beeman FF, okay? You can even at him and tell him how terrible he is.
Listen, you can listen to me for the evaluations, but not the pronunciations, okay? Let's be very clear. The other thing I wanted to say is I the highest grades I gave him, which were very high, actually 4 out of 5 for these specific attributes, but stem nuance and manipulation movement, which I think is right in line with kind of what you were saying. And I think that is really how he creates separation. I think that's a really high end trait, or it's like a high IQ part of being a wide receiver, is like understanding those techniques and being able to execute them. And so I think that in my opinion is like, okay, this can lead to like serious development. Like if a team takes this guy and develops him, like these are skills they don't need to teach him. He has the athleticism. It's the other stuff. You don't need to worry about the block. Like, I think I agree with you. The upside can be there. He can be, I think, a pretty promising NFL player. But I like the other thing I was going to say when talking about Royals, he's so much more shut up. He's so much more dynamic after the catch than this guy. And so that's why I like him so much more. I think that he has so much more upside at the next level.
Fair.
Yeah.
All right. So by the numbers,
fuck you guys.
Again, it's good. I think all three of these are going to be good. I believe the Higgins might end up being the favorite. But Jalen Noel, 4.2 yards after the catch per reception, a 12.2 ADOT. So those two things right now, like without watching him, it's kind of like that's different. Like those numbers don't usually go together like that. But slot percentage is 69, almost 70% usage out of the slot. Career yard per outrun is 2.62. It's above 2, which is good. Savage Dominator was 17.3. Zone yard per outrun, 3.25. Man, 2.39. One of his worst marks there. Late declare, breakout age of 20. So he does not check all the boxes, but he checks most of them. I guess you're kind of baking on the little micro movements and things that you're talking about with the small techniques in his route run, and then base that with the athleticism and decent analytic profile. He's a guy that, like, yeah, I'd comfortably probably take a shot on somewhere third round of my rookie drafts.
Right. Yeah. I think that's definitely a good read on the profile and kind of where he'll be going. I think what's so funny is this is one where the data lines up so well with the film. If you listen to what we're saying, he doesn't create yards after the catch, 4.2 yards after the catch, but he has a crazy high ADOT.
His ADOT of 12.2 is like,
right. That's because he's literally taking bombs to the yard, and he's like, but he can't take a short one to the house to save his life. You know what I mean? Gotcha. And so it's like he either has green grass in front of him and he'll beat you, but he's not going sideways, shaking you and then getting there, or he's not breaking a tackle and getting there. He just doesn't have the strength or the size or the lateral quickness and dynamic ability. So it sticks out so much compared to what we were just talking about with Jalen Royal, like where his numbers look staggeringly different, I think, compared to this guy in terms of the yards after catch numbers. It all kind of lines up differently. So I think that I like when that happens. We love when that happens, when the two kind of mirror each other.
Okay. Next guy is Jayden Higgins. Same college as last guy.
Or I'm sorry, no.
No. And again, we have a RAS for Higgins too, and it's 9.92 out of a possible 10. So.
Oof, I didn't see that. Wow.
I mean,
banging.
Yeah, that's nice. What do you got?
Yeah, this is. I'm interested to hear Jake's take on this. I'll give mine, but I think you had asked me specifically, and maybe I thought that's because you liked him, but I ended up liking him. I was kind of surprised. I didn't think I was going to like him. Liked him more than Noel, personally. So my overall breakdown: typical wide receiver 1 build, but plays almost big slot, which I thought was really interesting. He can play outside as well, but I just felt that he lined up so much in that big slot role and was really successful out of it. But unique fluidity for size despite lack of plus speed, smooth and diverse release package, exhibits ability to beat press consistently, displays excellent use of micro movements and footwork to create separation, outstanding ball skills, lacks overall athleticism, but does exhibit great curvilinear movement, allowing for great transition speed and ability to evade defenders despite lacking that lateral quickness. Would not describe him as elusive, though he does create quite a few yards after the catch. Excellent all-around awareness and above average blocker, in my opinion. I thought he exhibited excellent ball skills, just overall, really good footwork, above average route technique almost all the way through. I didn't really see that much pacing. I would like to see more pacing, from release and through the stem. I also didn't think that he separated all that well given his size, but I think it's more like he does a good job separating with route technique for sure. But you would think a guy of his size, when he kind of gets physical with a defender, like that he would be able to create more separation. I just found that it feels like guys stuck to him a little bit. So I didn't really give him a super high grade in terms of separation. And then the athleticism, I mean, the RAS score is crazy. I didn't really see that speed on tape. So maybe I got to kind of look back at that. But that was one that kind of didn't line up necessarily with the athletic testing. And I didn't really think he's all that elusive, even though he does create yards after the catch. But your thoughts?
Yeah, I have a lot of similar notes. I feel like whenever I'm on and we talk about wide receivers, I feel like our profiles are almost like one-to-one. It's kind of disgusting, but we definitely do. There are so.
What's interesting again is
but
we don't talk about this though beforehand, which I think is very interesting that they end up lining up sometimes. It's not because we're.
It's a Florida.
But it's definitely not because we're, like coming together on these evaluations beforehand. Like that just ends up being that way, which I think is a good thing. Like that's encouraging that I think the process is kind of working in a way.
Yeah, definitely. So I watched Jayden up against Baylor and Arizona State, which is funny because with Jalen Noel, I actually watched Iowa, West Virginia, and Kansas. So I don't know how I didn't get to see all the same games. I'm basically watching things based off of availability. Billy shared out some additional resources. I didn't use them for these three guys, so shame on me. But anyway, for Jayden Higgins, I loved his variability. I thought I was able to see him both at all three. I saw him at the X, Z, and Y, which given that he's 6'4", like you just don't really see that all that much. I didn't like. To Billy's point, I actually stated that he had no high-end game athleticism. So to hear that he tested at a 9.92 for his RAS score is crazy. It just doesn't translate in tape. I don't think like he looks particularly strong. He doesn't look particularly fast. He ran a 4.47 for a 6'4" guy, which is pretty insane at the combine.
6'4" running that fast.
It's absurd. Yeah, it's absurd. I'm sure that gets weighted too into his RAS. I don't know how the actual composite score works, but I'm assuming that probably helps a lot. But he is quick for his height. It just doesn't necessarily like show on tape. I thought that his concentration was actually exceptional. His hands were really, really high level.
Yes.
There were multiple tipped passes in the two games that I watched, and he caught, I think, 3 receptions off of tipped passes. And it was just like one of those things where, to Billy's point when he was talking about Jalen Noel, is that the quarterback play is like truly fucking terrible. Like I make fun of Noah Fafita. Yes. Like this dude, I don't even know who it is. Like I didn't want to look up who the quarterback was afterward. It was genuinely that bad. And I think truly that the quarterback play has a lot to do with almost the structure in which Jalen Noel and Jayden Higgins have to play in. Like I almost feel like that is why they're forced into the different types of roles that they are, mainly because the quarterback play wasn't particularly great. And they were both very
like, how are we going to get the ball in these guys' hands? Like,
I think that's very much the case. And I do think that they were both very productive considering how bad the quarterback play was. So all in all, that is a good read. My biggest critique of Jayden Higgins is honestly his stiff post-catch, like general running and reading of the game. I didn't think that he was necessarily bad post-catch, and he didn't lack necessarily the yak ability, but he lacked big play breaking ability. Like I was saying before, his ability to actually like sprint into open field just doesn't look like it's there. Like he just doesn't gain literal separation from a defender, both while running a route, but also after catching a pass, running through a gap or anything along those lines doesn't just seem very easy for him. That all being said, I was very, very surprised to see how he tested, like I said before, at the combine. Like just incredible. And for a 6'4" dude, like he does look pretty silky. Like I'm not going to lie. Like he has a lot of he has a lot more ability than I was expecting out of an Iowa State wide receiver. Honestly, both him and Jalen Noel are relatively higher level prospects than I was expecting to come out of that program, given that I didn't really hear much about them throughout the year. So I was pleasantly surprised to watch both of them play and watch their tape.
Yeah, I just want to say very fluid movement, like excellent ability to drop his hips, get low, execute a move, burst through that like squat, which like gives him like I actually gave him a pretty good burst score compared to his speed score because I do think he does kind of get out of his release and his second level release pretty well with some good burst. In general, just like for that size to be able to move that way is just I was just very surprised. But I watched him against UCF, Arizona, and Kansas, and I just want to echo again like what you said with his hands. Like he has some of the highest marks for body control, catch radius, ball tracking, hands in the entire class, contested catch. Like there were some impressive sideline catches over the shoulder where he was snagging some in traffic up against, physical contested catches, like just a lot of really good technique from a ball skills perspective, really good concentration. So I think this is a guy who with that athletic testing and his size and everything, he's probably going to go pretty high in this draft, like in the NFL draft. So I think, I'm going to be much more interested in him than his teammate Noel.
Mhm.
And I think for different reasons, I'm going to be more interested in him and Royal. They're different players, but I think they got actually very similar scores. They might have gotten actually the same score, but for different reasons.
All right, by the numbers, yeah. Before Jake brought it up, and I think actually you brought it up in the profile before, but looking at Noel and Higgins having the same quarterback, they both end up with very similar yak after the reception and ADOT. Jayden's is 12.1 ADOT with a yards after the catch per reception of 3.8.
That's crazy.
Noel was like 4.2. Both of them, you don't see that very often. So me, just without watching them, sounds like they probably have a quarterback problem where these guys are getting the ball where they're getting the ball, but maybe quarterback has a noodle arm, is slow to process, where even if these guys are getting more separation than it looks at the time when they actually catch the ball, is because I don't think that quarterback's probably getting the ball on time, would be my guess. Anyway, slot rate 29.1. Career yard per out run is 2.66, which is good. Zone yard per out run 2.6 is good. Man yard per out run 3.09. And playing alongside Noel, who had a dominator of about 17 and a half. Jaden Higgins has a dominator of 31.5. So you tell, based on those two wide receivers, who was the alpha on that team. He's a dirty guy. He's a dirty declare. He's an early declare and a breakout age of 20. But yeah, I mean, you guys are saying quarterback play was not very good. I tend to agree. This is probably why they both kind of have that weird A dot to yak thing going on.
Yeah, and what I will say though is, first of all, he made the quarterback look better than Noel did. Like when you watch the film, like things just look better for him because he's just, I think, better at the catch point and just certain other aspects of it. But one other point I wanted to make on him, what was that? Was what Jake said with, so the yards after the catch thing though, for both these guys, we didn't see it with them, both Jake and myself, right? I don't think it's a lack of, specifically for Higgins, I don't think it's a lack of field vision. He actually, like, when he gets the ball, I do think he kind of like sees where he wants to go and kind of tries to execute it, but he doesn't have the athleticism on tape to actually get through that hole or actually gain that edge on the defender. You know what I mean? It's like right there, he sees it and you see him turning and looking at it, but he can't execute it. And so I don't see that 9.9 whatever Raz on tape. Maybe we're wrong, but I just don't think that that's going to be a part of his game that translates to the next level or that he like really excels at. I think there's other parts of his game that can make him a successful wide receiver at the next level. And I don't think yak is like, I think it can be better. And I think it is part of the QB thing, but I don't think it's a strong point of their game, either one of those guys.
All right. That was our news, nonsense, couple topics, and we'll finish out here with some trade discussion. So actually, one just a general question: what does Strange cost? We're talking about the tight end in Jacksonville. What would he cost? When the news broke and realized kind of messed up in D5, I just sent a random 26 fourth and it got declined right away. So more than that.
For Brenton Strange, yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
I mean, I just like, yeah, go ahead, Jake, please.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think you're probably already pushing into like mid to early second range, folks. Depending on what the TEP is in the league, I just don't see a world where Evan Ingram had kind of the success that he did with Trevor Lawrence over the last few years in Jacksonville, regardless of the head coaching changes, that folks are going to be completely off of, probably the true tight end one there.
Yeah, I think you're looking at a late second round value for him.
I don't think that that's updated properly. Like the problem is that we're talking about a very like micro move, and I do love Dynasty Trade Calculator, but they don't update on like a daily basis. So I think if you look at that, probably by the end of March, that value for Brenton Strange is going to be up significantly.
Yeah, and if you go to Keep Trade Cut, which is obviously not the gospel or anything like that, but it's a good place to go to, especially for these quick like changes that happen. You can see those, having an effect in the market, but he's basically at like a late second round pick value. And I actually think that's kind of about right. So, maybe you're talking early third, couple thirds, contender second, those kind of things. Like I think that's where his value's at. And like, I probably, for the most part, would take a second for him. If I have him, which I do have him quite a few spots. So I'll shop him around a little bit. I probably would just hold him though. I think he's actually been pretty good when he has the role. And so, you see them kind of moving off of Christian Kirk and some other guys. And so I think he's going to have probably a pretty significant passing role in that offense. So probably be all right.
Okay. Another trade. We have Trevor Lawrence, Kelsey, CMC, Amari Cooper, 311 for the 107, Xavier Legette, and Dubs.
And I pre-emphasized this. This is the first year Dynasty guys league that I started up last year. This was an off-season trade that just happened. And I think we all know where the value is, right? Like, I don't think we need to talk about what side this is on. I added this because I want us to talk through process and like why this is a bad process trade to go through as the person who owned Trevor Lawrence, Travis Kelce, CMC, Amari Cooper, and the 311. So that's kind of where I saw this, because I guess maybe before I even say that, because I guess that was preemptive. We all agree that that's the right side, right? Like, it's the players on this. Okay, cool. So let's just talk through, like, what would you do if you owned those assets, you wanted to get off of them, and you wanted to get into rookie picks, you wanted to get a little bit younger? What's kind of the best way to work through that as the owner of those assets?
Don't package them. You sell them one by one.
Yep.
That's it. You package ancillary players. You package Josh Palmer's, right? You don't package CMC. You don't package Kelsey, even though it's getting closer. Maybe Amari Cooper, but really, you could have got a whole lot more one for one. You could have went Cooper. You probably could have got Dubs plus for Cooper, possibly. Cooper Legette, maybe kind of Cooper in a third. You could get Legette. T-Law, it's basically giving away free here. I would have just taken the time and try to get rid of T-Law, get some picks back. Kelsey, get some picks back. Whatever. I would have done it piece by piece. That's it.
Yeah, I'm not even sure that the package or the picks package is enough for T-Law alone, to be honest with you. So, I mean, just that's one miss. So I would say 100%. I was exactly what I was going to say, is what Uriah said. You don't consolidate like this. You want to, pick them apart. You want to actually go to other people and look for packages like this. You don't want to give packages away like this. You want to do them piece by piece. It's the best way to get most value for each piece. In this specific deal, Cooper, I think, is one that you just like. A part of Dynasty that's really tough is patience. You got to apply some patience at some level. There's a lot of assets that I've had on my roster that I was told I would never be able to sell. Old guys, Aaron Rodgers 3 or 4 years ago, just a lot of different players that if you're just a little bit patient with, you can really, make gains on them and just wait for things to happen. So Amari Cooper, he hasn't even signed anywhere yet. Just wait till he's signed somewhere. I mean, that he literally is a guy who had one of the worst seasons last year, but has some of the most talent. And we know that it was probably more situational, and we know that he's going to end up signing somewhere else. So it's like, just wait for that and go and sell him then. So I just think, there's different ways to attack all of these different situations if you have a little bit of patience. I think CMC, you could have easily gotten somewhere near like a early second for him alone. Like, yeah, I don't know. There's just point scoring season is not that far away. You know what I mean? It's very likely that 107 is not going to turn your team around in any form or fashion. And so, rushing this move does not help you at all. Applying patience, making sure you gain as many picks as possible over the long term, or as many high value assets as possible, in getting rid of these, is the way you need to be thinking about it.
Yeah, I think you both hit it really well. And I think the best way to look at it, to Billy's point about this being the non-point scoring season, is that you have here, realistically, 3 relatively high-end scoring assets. That's almost deflating Amari Cooper to what he could be at his ceiling. And you realistically get a singular mid-tier first, a second round rookie pick from last year, who is now probably touching early third, and Dobbs, who I really don't know what his market value is, but it isn't enough to be attractive. And so I really would want to just kind of like dissect what you're doing to your team by making this move in the first place. Like, if your sole goal is to become younger, right? Like, if that's your thought process, think about the ways in which you can kind of take on younger assets without it having to necessarily look like a rookie pick. Like, maybe you're overvaluing the rookie pick as a whole because you think it could be any one of the first round available players. That isn't very realistic either. So, like, being able to consolidate in your head and kind of like fraction off the way that this move happens, I think would be more important. Basically what Uriah said is, like, take each asset almost as a singular piece and then try and turn that into something else, because you're not getting anything elite back. If you were to do a move like this, I would expect it to get in return Malik Neighbors, a Justin Jefferson, something where there's a reason why you're packaging all of those pieces together to get something better. Hopefully you're doing something like this to get to an elite quarterback, right? Like, you're not getting off of Trevor Lawrence to now probably not get a very high-end quarterback in return. If this was maybe last year's quarterback class, I would say, okay, that's fair. But this year's quarterback class, I don't feel as strongly about that. So that would just kind of be my feedback here. I don't ever want to like harp on the actual trade itself, but more so the way in which you're thinking about the trades that you're making. And I think that's really where this kind of has a lot of flaws for me, and where we can probably become better. But we do have an actual trade for the last.
Sorry, real quick though. Like, we do. I think one really big piece of this is, like, yeah, things are going to change. We just talked about that in the draft for sure. But you're talking about the 107. You just go look at kind of how things stand right now, and you're talking about like Quinshawn Judkins, Trevion Henderson, Igbuka, Shadur Sanders. Like, that one piece, you got to think to yourself. You got to go look and be like, is that one piece going to, impact my rebuild or my team in any form or fashion, like what these guys remaining on my team would, or what I could do with them in a single move? Like, it's just, yeah, you definitely got to take a step back sometimes and think about that before you try to rebuild in this way. You should be getting out to Jake's point, Malik Neighbors, whatever. I would expect multiple firsts otherwise. You know what I mean? Like, getting back a haul here. And yeah, this is a tough pill to swallow, I think, for that manager. They're gonna feel it in time.
Yep.
All right. Last one, we have Trevor Lawrence again. 106 for Mahomes in the 308. 12 team, super flex, 6 for a touchdown, -4 for an interception. Tight end premium is 2 PPR. I think I think it's worth it. Lawrence 106, depending on what you're trying to do. Mahomes has definitely got more. He's going to be around forever, right? Until he retires. Trevor Lawrence might not have an opportunity to retire. So that's a little scary, but I don't hate this at all. I can see a reason why giving up on an asset like Mahomes to tear down to another player to get into the first round, mid first round, is okay.
Yeah. Like in theory, I agree. Like I do think in theory, like this is a good way to kind of like move off of Mahomes, 106 and T-Law. Like that's a pretty good package. I just feel like
I'm probably buying into Jaguars a little bit more in my head, considering they drafted Brian Thomas Jr. last year and brought in what on paper looks to be competent head coach and offensive coordinator. So that might be blurring it for me for a little bit, but
yeah, I mean, it's a tough one for me. I think obviously Mahomes is such a safe asset, great quarterback. Things are going to likely be better than what it is in this, couple year span for him. So I have no doubt about that. I also think Trevor Lawrence might be getting a much better situation, and adding the 106 is a pretty nice price for that. I'd probably lean that way too. Yeah, I would probably lean that way.
Wow, I'm surprised, but that's okay. I don't mind being the odd guy out. I'm not selling Mahomes for that package. Just not going to happen. Like, I think we're living in this bubble of recency bias of seeing Mahomes have, his first ever outside of the top 5 points per game finish for a quarterback. And we're selling that. Like, I just don't believe it. Honestly, I just don't believe it. I don't think it's going to be a long-term issue. I think with Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy being back in action this upcoming season, being completely healthy, hopefully also being not suspended would be great. Bringing back Hollywood Brown.
Left tackle.
What was that?
Trading away your left tackle.
I do think that
offensive coordinator you had last year that gave you your worst fantasy output ever.
Yeah, I do think that those are definitely issues, and maybe he has another down year. I just don't think that it's a long-term issue, personally. And I also just don't want to buy into this class at that price. Like, I just don't think that that's the way to do it. Like, tearing down from Mahomes for a singular season fill-in for Trevor Lawrence and the 106 isn't how I want to get off of Mahomes, is I guess more so my point. And if I'm the owner of Mahomes, like that isn't how I move my elite assets. And I also am not, I guess, trying to like fall on my sword and be like, I think Mahomes is on like the way down. Cause that's what this trade tells me. And I just don't see how this trade actually helps my team in the long run. It just helps it for the short run. So that's kind of how I see this trade.
There's a potential it could help in the long run for sure, especially if Lawrence is like gets right, kind of. But granted, your point still stands that you're selling Mahomes at his lowest, and that's what my hesitation was, and what I was kind of trying to say is like, and I never actually said it, but that's the hesitation, is that you're selling an asset at its lowest point, and I would never do that either. I haven't shopped any of my Mahomes shares. I'm just letting them sit there, and I wouldn't really do that. But in a vacuum, I do think that it kind of makes sense value wise. And I do think that 106 could be like, if you're not going to probably go after a quarterback there, which is what you shouldn't be doing, so you probably get a high end skill player there. But it's a fair point that you're basically tearing down from the value that Mahomes could potentially bounce back to for just a single first, which doesn't feel that great. So it's a good point by Jake.
So realistically, if we look at the class, right, you're getting either a running back, probably 4, wide receiver 2 or 3, and maybe QB 1. Like, I'm going to be real with you. If I'm not getting the elite asset on top of it, like, I just don't want to take the risk on Trevor Lawrence. Like, give me a lot of other quarterbacks, but you're telling me basically like a 5th to potentially 6th round startup quarterback plus the 106 is equivalent to probably like a late first / early 2nd round startup quarterback. Like, that's just, I don't know. I just think that that's bad process personally. And I'd much rather try and sell off of the high, hopefully, if I'm completely off of the situation, that will probably present itself earlier on in the season rather than right now where it's fucking dead in the water. He had a terrible Super Bowl, which is crazy that we're talking about, one of the modern day best quarterbacks that we have having a bad Super Bowl, and people are like, oh, I'm kind of out on him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a good point. I wouldn't sell any high-end asset like a Mahomes, on a dip. I don't think it makes any sense. So that's definitely a point well taken. Also, this trade doesn't really exemplify it, but the trade prior and the trade that went down in Dynasty League of Legends makes me think that Trevor Lawrence's value is far too low in general. Like we saw him go for like a 202 and something in our Dynasty League of Legends, and that prior trade that we were talking about just makes me think that his value is far too low. So just as a standalone asset, Trevor Lawrence, I think that he is one that you could definitely go out and acquire for like a rebuilding team, for a contender at low value to fill in depth. I like Trevor Lawrence, the asset. I do think that he's going to have a bounce back, but Jake's probably right on this one.
Sounds.
And AJ, KTC loves this trade, and that's when you should be scared of it.
That's a really good point. Honestly, that is a really good point.
All right, I got to run. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about?
That's it.
We knocked it out the park.
All right, thanks for listening. Thanks for all the people on the YouTube comments. Like, that's always one of the best parts of the show. Follow us on YouTube. Join our Discord. It's free. It's fun. Follow us on socials. Other than that, have a good night.
Awesome. Peace out, fam.